we are, Independence Hall. Well, actually, I'm at the Independence Hall Visitor Center. And this, sometimes, if you come up to the second floor of this little rooftop cafe, this is probably the best view you can get of Independence Hall. Fun fact, most people don't know you could come up here. Fun fact, there's a lot of things people don't know about visiting this area and what we're going to do today. Also, fun fact, I was once told by a tour guide company in the city of Philadelphia, I was too Philadelphian to give tours of Philadelphia. So what we're going to do today is I am going to show you my tips and tricks of visiting Old City, because guess what? In 2026, the world will be coming to Philadelphia, and I'm going to show you how to do it. This is also a spite video. I'm going to make this video hoping you, the person who travels to Philadelphia or the person from Philadelphia who comes here, uses this YouTube video and doesn't pay $50 per person to take a tour. Right now I am standing at 6th and Market. This is the Independence Hall Visitor Center. I started the tour up there. Let me show you how to get there. The Independence Hall Visitor Center is a place where you can get tickets to Independence Hall. You can buy $60 or $80 t-shirts. Kind of expensive. I'm going to show you how to save some money. Also, this is one of the best places to use the bathroom. They got a bathroom here, and not only do they have a bathroom, they have a water fountain. And the water fountain is always working here. There's a lot of non-working water fountains that were shut off in the time of COVID. Now right here, look at this. Liberty View. Liberty View, and these are the steps you take to go up and you get that view of Independence Hall. Just go up those steps and make a left. You come back down here. This is the theater part of Independence Hall Visitor Center. If you go here in this little theater, they play a movie, and in that movie they show you all the touristy places that people visit. And if you go into this theater, this is where they tell the history of the Independence Hall area. The George Washington, Ben Franklin stuff. They talk about that. This is the Philadelphia Visitor Information thing. This is where they sell tickets to the bus tours. That they give you some of the information. And if you come here, they have like little fun activities for the kids to do. This is pretty cool. This is a mousetrap from the colonial days. Look at this. That's how they killed mice. And then they have they talk about the repair of the Liberty Bell. Did you know that the crack in the Liberty Bell isn't a defect, but it is a repair to make the bell sound better? If you go over here, this is where you get tickets for Independence Hall. Independence Hall has timed tickets. So you have to have a ticket to go into Independence Hall. If you come here on the weekends, I would say most weekends, Independence Hall sells out. Like, you can't get tickets. You can reserve a ticket a day early on a website. It's like national. You can just Google it. Reserve tickets. It's like $1. So, and I also heard that they are now giving tours. You're not going to get this. Is only going to be good for like a few weeks, but nobody else is going to tell you this. They don't often give tours of the second floor of Independence Hall, but right now, mid-September 2024, if you book the 4:20 p.m. tour, you can go on the second floor of Independence Hall. Never saw the second floor of Independence Hall? Well, guess what? It's on my YouTube channel. So I'm just back at where I started, 6th and Market. This is Market Street. Back in the day, Market Street used to be called High Street, I think. High Street. And if you come down here, these little markers talk about the people who lived at this property back in the 1776 days, right? Like the William Schaff estate. He had an empty dwelling. This is William Knuckle. He was a merchant. Sometimes if you look down, the pavement will tell you the story of the past. Back there is a museum. It's called the National Constitution Center. It's fine. There are other museums that you can visit in this area. A lot of them are free. Some of them, oh, we're dead. Oh, we're all dead. Don't jaywalk like me. Okay. So right here, this is called the First Amendment Plaza. And this plaza was built in front of Independence Hall so people could protest. Sometimes there'll have to be politicians speaking around here. Or they had a debate the other night at the Constitution Center, and people can protest here. And this is right here at 6th and Market. Look, I didn't even really take any steps. So much history to see and look at. Well, not really. See, the thing is, when you're making history, you don't realize you're making history. History's just Tuesday to you. And this was the house where George Washington and John Adams lived. And you figure you would save that. You would save the house where the presidents lived. Well, they didn't know that it was American history, and they just tore it down. Same thing with Ben Franklin's house. There's a lot of things that we tore down. But the only thing that really remains, this is the foundation of the basement of the house where George Washington and John Adams lived when they were president of the United States. A future president named John Quincy Adams, he also lived in this house. So technically 3 presidents lived here. And if you look down on the ground, it shows you the outlines of all the rooms. It also talks about the story, if they have a bunch of TV screens, and it talks about the story of not only George Washington, but the slaves that lived on this ground with George Washington. Talks about Oni Judge, the Chef Hercules, and I think back here, this was the slave quarters. So you see how big of a space George had, and this is where all the slaves had to live, in this one little room. A lot of people say it's kind of, I guess it's American history, so you got to talk about it. It's kind of ironic that people wrote about men being free, but yet they owned men. Okay, that's enough. Let's get back. Oh, they got some construction going on here. 11 o'clock. The bell's going to ring. We got to get to the front of this bell. Hold on. So this is Independence Hall. This is where the Liberty Bell was, inside that tower. And that the Liberty Bell is actually in the building over there. And when they took the Liberty Bell down, they put up another bell. But in 1876, they put in this bell. And it's called the Centennial Bell. And this is like my favorite piece of... That is my favorite piece of American history, that bell. It's 2 cannons from the Battle of Saratoga and 2 cannons from the Battle of Gettysburg. They were melted down. The bell weighs 13,000 pounds. So anyway, they melted down the 4 cannons from that battle, and they made that bell. It's called the Centennial Bell. So every time you hear that bell ring, you didn't hear a bell. You heard history. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Love that. That's my... So back in 2019, I spent a month, 30 days, 8 hours a day down in this area learning about all of the history. And that the fact about that bell really makes me happy. And this is the Liberty Bell. And now that my YouTube channel is back, I am happy to report I am the human being who has vlogged most with the Liberty Bell. Hey, Liberty Bell, we're back. They gotta clean this window. So, pretty cool. That's the Liberty Bell. People are taking pictures. Now, back in 2000, you used to be able to touch the Liberty Bell. And, some dude, like right after 9/11, some dude attacked the Liberty Bell with a hammer. So now when you want to go to these places, these historic locations, I think mostly it's Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell, you have to go through a metal detector, and it's almost as painful as going to an airport. All right, so I have a tour of Independence Hall at 12:20, and so we're just going to walk around for a bit. I'm going to show you this. Hold on, let's go this way. Let me show you how to save some money. Save that money. So now we're at 6th and Chestnut. Independence Hall is right across the street. And right here, this is another historic location. Actually, it's two historic locations. This is the old Public Ledger Publishing Office. And it's also the site of the world's biggest Wawa. And if you're looking to get a drink or a sandwich, may I suggest coming into here, because, man, look at this door, right? Look at that molding. You get yourself a hoagie. Look how big this place is. They have places for you to sit down. But the best thing are the prices of everything. It's not too crazy at a Wawa. Wawa's, look, you get 2 tasty cakes. Tasty cakes are a Philadelphia, like it's just like a cake, I don't know. But I'll give you a tip. If you ever get a crimpet, what you do is you get it and you rub it on your shirt, and that gets the icing off the package. I always get the tasty cakes. My favorite is the apple pie. Wawa has a wide variety of iced teas. They usually have a sale going on with their iced teas, like 2 for something. And they also are a dairy. That's actually how they started, was a Wawa dairy farm. But they can get Gatorades and sodas. They also have ATMs. And the ATMs, like your bank may charge you a service fee, but they don't charge a service fee. So it's a cheap ATM if you are from out of town. And if you want to order a sandwich, you just come here. You go to lunch. Got it. You get the hoagie. They usually have some type of sale going on. And also Wawa has really good coffee. So that's one way to save money. This is actually really horrible. I don't like showing this, but Philadelphia in 1976 was trying to get tourists to come here. So they made this thing called Signers Walk, where they put in a little plaque of all the people who did their, so you got George Claimer, and right here, Ben Franklin. Somebody stole him. And I've done a video on this recently. It's not in that great a shape. The rotary press, right here. I don't know what that means. I don't feel like reading. We're going to keep on walking. These are bikes that you can rent in the city. You just go here. I don't know how you do it. I'll tell you what, we have a thing in the city called the Philadelphia Naked Bike Ride. I have a bad history with it. But you can rent a bike for an hour for $15, drive it around. I think some of them are battery powered, but people will ride these bikes in the Naked Bike Ride, ride them bare ass naked, and then they don't have anything on the seats. So it's kind of disgusting. So this street, I'm still on 6th Street. I didn't go anywhere, right? I walked 1 block. Look how beautiful the buildings are. Look at these marble columns, and look at this doorway. Look at that, right? Take time to appreciate the small things, because I don't make them like this anymore. Across the street, still Independence Hall. You go down this street, 4th Street, this is, 6th Street, I'm sorry. 6th Street, this is Publisher Row. Right here, this is where they had the Ledger. This is where the Curtis building. This is where the Curtis Publishing Company was. Down here is a strip called Jewelers Row. It's where you buy the jewelry, although I never buy jewelry at Jewelers Row. But yeah, here's the Curtis building. The word living room was invented in this magazine, in this building, for a magazine called Ladies' Home Journal. Norman Rockwell, he did the covers for the Saturday Evening Post, and that was published out of the Curtis Publishing Building, or the Curtis Building. The owner of this building is a guy named Cypress Curtis, and he put this work of art in here. This is called the Magic Garden, and this is one of the largest glass mosaics works of art. I think it's the second largest in the United States. And when he had his employees come up and go up those elevators to the office, he wanted them to see something beautiful every day. So he had this installed. And you could just walk in here. Love this building. This is like such a cool place to walk around. There's an oyster bar right here called PJ Clark's. Yeah, here we go. The Saturday Evening Post. Norman Rockwell, right here. Matter of fact, I think this little office area you can rent, and it's called the Post. Pretty interesting. There used to be a Norman Rockwell museum in Philadelphia, but I don't know what happened to that. An American icon. Yeah. Come on, dude. How cool is this building? A lot of people get wedding photos up in here. And I think a lot of it now is condos and apartments. All right, so what we're going to do is we went in through the Magic Garden. We went in 6th Street. We're going to cut through. This exit's usually always open. You just come here. Go out 6th Street. And then we're going to go out 7th Street. Came in 6th, go out 7th. Go right here. We're going to turn left. We're going to turn left. And we're going to go into Washington Square. And we're just crossing the street. We're going into Washington Square. Washington Square is one of the 5 parks that was planned out by the founder of Pennsylvania. His name is William Penn. William Penn, I guess I got to talk about him real quick. You can't talk about the history of Philadelphia. You don't talk about William Penn. William Penn was a guy over in London, right? And he survived this fire, the Great Fire of London, 1666. And he had a little bit of anxiety, I think, and he was a little worried about fire. So when he developed a map of the city of Philadelphia, he wanted there to be like a grid-like map so fires couldn't really travel. He also wanted like 5 public parks or public squares where people could come if there was a fire and like everything around you was burning. You could come here and be safe. It was also a place if, like, you know, we had tiny row homes. We still do have tiny row homes. It's a place for people to come and exercise. You know, you could, I don't know, look at this fountain. It wasn't here in 1776, but you know what's here? I'll tell you what's here. A lot of dead bodies. A lot of dead bodies. Not just this one, but underneath the ground here, underneath the grass, slaves, troops, a lot of people who died of the yellow fever. But this is the grave of the unknown soldier who died at the Revolutionary War. I think they found him somewhere over on Chestnut Street in the 40s. And I'm not sure, I don't even know if they knew what type of troop he was, right? Everything was all, but they found his bones and they buried him here. Statue of George Washington. So George Washington was the first president of the United States, and he lived in Virginia, but he had a bunch of places in Philadelphia where he stayed. And usually, if he stayed there, there will be a sign saying, "Yo, guess what? George Washington stayed here." But there's a lot of, apparently I didn't know this, but apparently that's a thing. That's like if you're a historical dork, it's like a joke in the community of historical dorks that George Washington slept here. He slept everywhere, practically homeless, it seems. I'm trying to say. So this talks about the stuff I was just talking about, the dead bodies under here. There was also a prison across the street, the Walnut Street prison, or the Walnut Street prison is right here. And there's soldiers buried there. Oh, here's William Penn. I was just talking about him. And the way he developed the map of the city of Philadelphia, it's a grid, dude. Numbers, trees, it's a very easy system to understand the map of Philadelphia. He had 5 parks he wanted to build. I think this is Franklin Square, Washington Square, Center Square, which is now City Hall, Rittenhouse Square, and Logan Square. And 4 of those parks remain. This is another one of my favorite little hidden gems. And I already just showed you that bell. Well, look at this. This is the moon tree from outer space, which actually doesn't exist anymore. They chopped it down. The tree is gone. The stump no longer remains. But know what remains? The big rock talking about the moon tree from outer space. It was somewhere around here. And they removed the stump a while ago. I have a little piece of the stump. I remember the day they were taking it out and a piece fell off and I took it. And I have it in my house. I have a little tree, a little bit of a tree that was grown in outer space. In the 1970s, there was an experiment and they wanted to see how tree roots would grow in outer space because there's no gravity. So they had like 500 seeds go up in outer space. And, the roots grow. The seeds come down. I'm like, oh, what are we going to do with all these seeds? And the guy goes, I don't know, let's plant them. So there's like 500 trees that started growing in outer space. They're all over the country. You could just Google moon trees. This is the Walnut Street prison. The first flight in the United States happened in the yard of this prison. It's a hot air balloon flight. Guy launched his balloon, flew over the Delaware River into a town called, I think he flew into Deptford, right near the Deptford Mall. And if you ever go to Deptford, they have all these hot air balloons. And if you come here, the place where it launched, there's not even a note. Like, the first flight in America happened here. Kind of weird. Ooh. Yeah, see the prison bars? Pretty cool. This is the Penn Mutual Towers. Check out the molding around this door. That's heavy duty, dude. They don't make it like this. Now, it's 1976. Queen Elizabeth actually walked through these doors with Mayor Frank Rizzo and her husband, Prince Philip. And they went to the top of this building and they saw the unimpressive skyline of Philadelphia, 1976. Really, if you go up to the top of that building and look in this direction, there's really nothing to see. Here's another cool thing. So this is Insurance Row. Remember I just showed you Publisher Row, Jewelers Row. This is Insurance Row, and I love this thing too. This is the front of a building that was here in the 1800s. They knocked down the building, but they kept the facade. Love it, cuz I'm a little bit of an architecture dork. Right, isn't that great? You can sort of look out a window. Right there, they would see Independence Hall. So cool. All right, we're now at the intersection of 5th and Walnut. We're going to turn here. Across the street's Independence Hall. Really trying to keep this very... Oh, I'm jaywalking in front of a cop. But luckily for me, I live in Philadelphia, and they have other things to worry about. Around this time is when they'll start doing the ghost tours. You know what? Actually, I think they might do the ghost tours all year round. And you come here. Here's another park. Now, a lot, like I told you, we knocked down a lot of the old historic buildings. Like I said, when you're making history, you don't realize you're making history. You're just taking up space. And right here, this is the Surgeons Hall, University of Pennsylvania, the first medical school in America. Right here, they knocked it down, and to outline the space, this is how big the building was. Over here, I think this is where, this is America's Pentagon was over here back in 1776. Something that we don't think about. The Supreme Court, the President, the Congress, and the Senate, they all did their thing right there. So if you ever think about, security issues, because you go to Washington, D.C., everything's so separated, it would be impossible to... Oh, it doesn't. I'm not talking about such things. But I'm just saying... It's crazy how close everything was. If they had one grenade, it would be very easy to take care of all of America. This is the site of the Secretary of the Navy, right here. Usually over there at that bench. It's a very nice homeless guy. If you ever have a, extra bag of chips or whatever, just give it to him instead of throwing them out. It's kind of nice, right? Nice to be nice. This is Robert Morris. Robert Morris is the financier of the American Revolution. France paid for 90% of the ammunition of the United States. The majority of the rest was paid by this man, Robert Morris. Also, the boats that we use in the United States Navy, they were given to the United States from Robert Morris. Those ships, a lot of them were slave ships. He made a lot of his money in the slave trade. But yeah, so there's a statue of him. Sometimes this statue does get vandalized. They rate human trafficker on his thing. This is the second bank of the United States. I don't really understand how money works. If you go down the street, there's a thing called the National Reserve or the Federal Reserve, and they make our money. Did you know the government doesn't own them? I don't even know who owns them. Is money even real? I don't know. But back in 1826, I think money was federally run, and then Andrew Jackson, he wanted the money to be run by the states. So when this is the second bank, across the street was the first bank of the United States, and it's a whole thing. You can look into it. Money's confusing. And people want me to buy cryptocurrency, and I'm like, I don't even understand real currency. Love this building. So this isn't a bank anymore. Matter of fact, they closed down the federal banks, and the buildings across the street were state-run banks. So the day they shut down the money federally, everybody took their money out of this bank and went right across the street to the other banks. I mean, how does that work? How do you take money from something else? Oh, the leaves are falling. Oh, that's depressing. Oh, no. So if you go into the bank now, it's a portrait studio. of a lot of the people from the 1776 days. Yeah, see, there's a bank, that's a bank, that's a bank, and there were probably banks there, but they knocked that down to make it a hotel. And yeah, man. Love it. All right, so Independence Hall's right there, 1 block. We're going this way. Going past the Renaissance Hotel. You'll see in the news that Philadelphia is a dangerous area. I would say this area of Philadelphia is pretty safe. I'm not saying bad things don't happen. Bad things happen everywhere. But sometimes, you know, here's my tip. If you see somebody screaming, just don't go that way. Go some other way. Okay. So we're at Chestnut Street, and if you come here and you make a right, you will see Carpenters Hall. In Carpenters Hall, this is where the room where the First Continental Congress, as a matter of fact, they weren't even called the First Continental Congress. They were just called the Continental Congress. They met inside this building, and the whole start of the Revolutionary War thing kind of happened in here. 12 of the 13 colonies got delegates into this building, and they wrote a letter to King George. I think third, I forget. King George was his name. You can Google it. Anyway, they wrote a letter to King George and like, yo, cuz, you gotta calm down with these taxes. You're driving us nuts with these taxes. And they mailed this letter to King George. And then King George does absolutely nothing. And then we do this Revolutionary War thing. Come up here. And you come in here, this is a free building. You could give a donation. See if my lady friend's here. She's here, okay. You go up these steps, and there is a library. And in that library is where Ben Franklin negotiated, like France giving us the money for the Revolutionary War. All right, this is it. Carpenters Hall. We're going out the front door, and I love this part of these historic buildings. I love to think about the people who walk down the steps, and some of the steps you see, Ben Franklin walked down, and I'm pretty sure he definitely walked on this one. This, if you pull on this, it's a doorbell. It's not a doorknob. That's a doorknob. That's a doorbell. Oh, sorry. All right, so we're going outside the front door of Carpenters Hall. They have signs everywhere in this area of Old City, and if you're ever curious about what's going on, you could read the sign and figure out the history. This is the first bank of the United States. For the longest time, it was just like a storage shed for the park rangers, and they did this musical a few years ago. They did this musical called Hamilton. And for some reason, the interest in this building was so crazy a few years ago that they decided that they're going to put money into this area or into this bank, and tourists are going to be able to go in and visit there for the first time in a long time. These are cobblestones. Cobblestones are rocks that you get from the riverbed. The Delaware River is not too far from here. So these are rocks from the Delaware River, and the way they get put into place is you lay these rocks just like this, and they didn't use cement. They would have dirt, and the horses would trot the rocks into place. Cobblestones. Right down this way, that's where Ben Franklin lived. We're not going to do that yet. We're going to go this way. So Independence Hall is like 2 blocks in that direction. And this is the site of where Alexander Hamilton worked as the treasurer of the United States Usually, you can walk in this area, but it's under construction right now. You see, in 2026, Philadelphia, or America, will be celebrating its quincentennial anniversary, 250th anniversary of being a country, and there's going to be a bunch of tourists here. Across the street right here is the Science History Institute. Free museum, cuz. Free museum talks about the entire history of science. And then this is my favorite museum in this area. It's called the Museum of the American Revolution. Matter of fact, I might buy a season pass today. I might get crazy. I might buy a season pass at the American Revolution. Get nuts. And right here, this brick, this outline, this is where Alexander Hamilton's office was for the Treasury of the United States. And this is the first bank of the United States. Maybe after my tour of Independence Hall, we'll do this museum. Yeah, so this got a new power wash, got sprayed down. There's a gorgeous dome inside this building. And I'm friendly with some of the tour guides in this area. And they got to go in and go inside and see the dome. And I was so jealous. I was like, oh, I wish I could see the dome. No dome for you. So in 1976, Queen Elizabeth also visited this area right here, and there was like a big block party, and she gave the city of Philadelphia a bell, and it was called the Bicentennial Bell. Earlier, we saw the Centennial Bell, and that's the bell with the 4 cannons that rang. Well, her bell, the bell that Queen Elizabeth gave to the city of Philadelphia, was just unveiled here at this park. And this park was just redeveloped. And this thing sat in storage for a decade, and now it's out for the world to see. And you could. I made a video about Queen Elizabeth and her trip to Philadelphia. She spent a lot of time with the mayor of Philadelphia, Frank Rizzo. For the people of the United States, from the people of Britain, let freedom ring. And that's fun fact is we beat up her grandpop during that revolutionary, or great grandpop. I think her great grandpop. I don't know. Don't write a book report. Did I mention that? If you're a Philadelphia person, you ever hear of the bank PSFS? This is one of the original PSFS banks, that little old style with the columns. That's called Greek Revival architecture. It's a little nod to the Greek democracy. You'll see that all over, like these little columns and the archways and these little doors. It's just a little tip of the cap to democracy, because the modern democracy started here, just about a block and a half that way. So if you come on this street, Walnut Street, you'll see some of the houses have different doors, and what they do on this block is they show you all the houses and how they were built over like 100-year time period. You can see there's different windows. Some different generations, they had more brick than window, but then here you got more window than brick in the front. Right down there, the very last house is where Bishop White lived. And Bishop White was the pastor to the founding fathers. So Ben Franklin, George Washington, John Adams. Anytime those guys went to church at Christ Church, which is a few blocks in that direction, Bishop White said Mass. Dolly Madison lived at the corner house here with a guy named John Todd. And in the 1790s, we had this horrible thing called the yellow fever epidemic. And people were dying left and right of this yellow fever. And one week, Dolly Madison it was this house right here. Dolly Madison lost her husband, 1793. Dolly Madison lost her husband, Todd, and her son in 1 week with yellow fever. And one of the people who paid his respects was James Madison, who became the 4th president of the United States. He was working in that building 2 blocks away called Independence Hall. But this is a Philadelphia row home. This is Flemish bond. It's a fancy type of brickwork. They bake these black bricks. They got this kind of glaze. I think this is called a stacker. This is called a header. It has this cool black and red look. I like the way it looks. It's an old style brickwork. They don't do it these days because it's kind of expensive. This is an old colonial yard. Go back here in the house and you see they would have a little yard, and I think they would use it. It wouldn't be like this. It would be more like this, where they had things boxed out, and there wasn't any corner stores. Well, I mean, there was some markets, High Street, Market Street. The reason why we call it Market Street is that's where all the stores were, but there weren't a lot of stores, so you would have to grow your tomatoes and all types of things. Look at this. Butterfly in the sky, I can fly twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, reading rainbow. Sing it. These lights are, I can go anywhere. Oh, sing it. Let's do it. These lights were invented by Ben Franklin. You ever hear of him? This is called a Franklin light. Or no. I beg to differ. This is not a Franklin light. This part here is not part of a Franklin light. See that bottom? I'll show you a Franklin light. The term gentrification started in the area, like 2 blocks that way. There was an area called Society Hill, and those were like the oldest houses in the city, and they were falling apart in like the 1950s. So we had a city controller named Edmund Bacon, and he's like, yo, we got to save these old buildings from these poor people, or they're gonna fall apart. And so the city started buying back these properties that people were living in, and now it's like one of the hoity-toity areas of the city. Oh, did they replace all the lights? Huh, maybe they did. All right, well, I'll show you. Not exactly a Franklin, or maybe, it doesn't matter. So Ben Franklin, back in like 1776 or whatever, they would have like one dome on top of the lamps. So kids would come by and just break the lamp, and it would like destroy the light for the block, right? So Franklin said, we know what we'll do? We'll just create a lamp with a lot of pieces, and that way if one piece gets broken, the lamp could still work. And he also had, it was a gas lamp, so they would have a guy come by and light it every night, and the bottom part was glass, and it would just radiate real good. Ben Franklin, check him out. He did some good shit. Now I'm walking back to Independence Hall. We showed over there, that's the second bank of the United States. Over here, this is the American Philosophical Society. It's a big society of a bunch of know-it-all learned men and women. I think a lot of Nobel Prize winners are members of the group. If you go in there, they have journals. The journals of Lewis and Clark are owned by these guys. The photos taking of the men landing on the moon are owned by these guys. Journals of Ben Franklin. And I don't know if you can go in here. They have a museum across the street, and once in a while they'll have like maps that Ben Franklin looked at, weather, like scientific experiments that Ben Franklin worked on. They had a whole thing about maps, and the Lewis and Clark stuff was on display. It's a pretty cool building. They do every few months they change the exhibits in there. It's like $4 or $5. It's a pretty cool spot. This is my favorite statue in the city. It's not the Rocky statue. It's the statue of Ben Franklin. You see, Ben Franklin's wearing a toga, and that's kind of a tip of the cap to the Greek democracy. He also, his arms are resting on a pile of books. Ben Franklin started the free library. You could take a book. I think it was like 2 pennies. You could take a book, bring it back, whatever it was. And Ben Franklin started the library with the American Philosophical Society. Also, the first books were stored at Carpenters Hall. I should have showed you that. And if you see, Ben has the, what's that called? What's that thing called? That macho, the scepter. He has it upside down. And that's kind of him saying, yo, monarchy stinks. And education for the everyday man, that rules. I'm now back on the block where Independence Hall is. And we're going to go inside Independence Hall, and it's going to take me 40 minutes or 20 minutes of a tour to just take this 10-second shot. But I gotta go with the room. That's right. I did everything you saw. I did everything in about 1 hour. Carpenters Hall, Wawa, Independence Hall Visitor Center. 1 hour. Not too shabby. My tour doesn't start till 12:20, so I have 20 minutes to kill. This is like another one of these hidden gems that nobody really talks about, but you go in here and you will see the Declaration of Independence that was read on those steps by Sheriff John Nixon for the first time publicly. Also the Inkwell. The Inkwell, Thomas Jefferson dipped his quill in to write the Declaration of Independence. Right here, look at this. You think about how many lives were affected by the ink that came out of that inkwell. How many men and women, or just, I guess, men, everybody. How many people were free because of the stuff they wrote. It's so incredible. It just gives me goosebumps. And this is the Declaration of Independence that was held by John Nixon, July 4th, 1776, on the steps of Independence Hall. This is the one the dude read. The final draft of the Constitution. This is George Washington's final draft before he gave it the thumbs up, before it was sent to the printers. When I was studying to be a tour guide, it was like in March. It was real cold and windy, and one day I just sat here and stood at this inkwell for like way too long, like 20 minutes to a half hour. And I was just thinking about the history and how many lives like I just told you. It's insane. And I bet you most people who come to Independence Hall don't come into this building. This is where the Senate and Congress met in right in 1790. This is the capital of the United States, Philadelphia. If you ever heard the term upper house, lower house, the upper house is the Senate, the lower house is the Congress, and the reason why they say upper house, lower house is because of this building. The Congress met at the lower house and the Senate met at the upper part of the building. You could take a tour in there. And right here, this is where Nicolas Cage ran around for, that's actually not true. They filmed, what's that movie called? National Treasure. None of that was filmed. Some of it was filmed in Philadelphia, but a lot of the stuff like on top of the roof of Independence Hall, that was all filmed at Knoxbury Farm. It's like an exact replica. And I'm going to be going in here when I take the tour of Independence Hall. This is going to be the first thing I see. It's a courthouse, and then they tell you about the history of that, and then you come over here, and then that's the room that you want to go into. If you ever saw the movie Trading Places, this is where They have this as a two-way street when they're filming Trading Places. It's actually a one-way street. This is Chestnut Street. And this is where Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, they cross paths after Eddie Murphy becomes super rich. This is a statue of George Washington. Back when I was a kid, this statue was actually made of stone. They replaced it with this metal statue because the actual stone statue started wearing down. You can see that statue at City Hall. Abraham Lincoln stood here in 1861. John F. Kennedy stood here in 1962. Presidents stopped giving speeches on this side of Independence Hall after that. Whenever a president gives a speech at Independence Hall, they never stand on this side. It's like a bad luck thing. They always give speeches on the other side. So that Declaration of Independence that Sheriff John Nixon read, these are the steps. So like he came out this door, stood on top of these steps, turned around here, and read the Declaration of Independence. And know what's cool about John Nixon? Well, I don't know if it's cool, but it's a fun fact. John Nixon was like the great-great-great-grandfather of Richard Nixon. Became president of the United States. All right. Now going into Independence Hall. And if you take the 420 tour, you're able to go up onto the second floor. And again, if you want to check it out, it is on my channel. One of my favorite things about this place are like the keystones on top of the doors. Man, they're so cool. Alright, so this is the boring part of the tour. We stand in the back of the tour group when this happens. That way I'm the first person to walk into the room where everybody wants to see. So I always go in first and I walk. I'll show you. Amazing keystone. I don't know if it's a keystone, but the top of the doorway. I just love it. Okay, this is the assembly room. And this is the assembly room. This is the room where it happened. Right there, that's the chair George Washington sat in. It's called the Rising Sun chair. Ben Franklin, he did a lot of hanging out right here. Most of the stuff from this area, most of the stuff in this room is replicas. The chair, that chair is original, and I think that walking stick is original.
It's a secret. So imagine the doors behind us closed. These drapes down. Middle of summer. How do you think it smelled? We're lucky enough that it's here.
Here, this is the steps. John Nixon stood here, read the Declaration of Independence.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, and that's going to wrap up my little walk around tour. One more thing I can't tell, I got to end the video with telling you this. Don't ever buy anything off a food truck in this area, in this old city area. They rip you off. If you're going to buy something from a store, not a food truck. They're jerk-offs. They charge $10 for a cheesesteak that's this big. And these water fountains do not work. Well, make sure you hit like and subscribe. And I'll sail with you later. Toodles!